So, in Unit 1, we took a look at a benchmark lesson as well as a Fundations lesson and assessed them using the rubric to see how effective they were at teaching phonics. I've chosen to modify the Fundations lesson here because, according to the rubric, it scored high in being a systematic and explicit program. It was lacking in engaging the students and providing opportunities for students to practice and give opportunities for diagnostic assessment so the teacher could drive her instruction. So I've kept the content of the lesson the same here, and I've just modified the delivery to make it more engaging for students, because this is something that we could do with any phonics program. I've used Google Slides and Screencastify, both of which are free, and I've linked you to them within the mini course to modify this lesson. That had allowed me to incorporate some animations and audio within my presentation here. So like I said, this is kind of meant to be a presentation because the animations that I've embedded into the slides. Now, unfortunately, you won't be able to hear the audio very well in this video, but I have included the slides for you so that you can play around with them and listen through it on your own to see how I've incorporated that audio. I will just use my voice for the audio portion of the presentations. So you can see here, I've just taken those Fundations material and mimicked kind of what they looked like in a digital format. So I'm going to go ahead and go into present mode here so we can see some of those animations I've included. And as I go through this, I want you to think about how this lesson could be differentiated even further, and what potential does this have to be more of a self-guided lesson. So at the beginning of the lesson, I've included the objectives from the Fundations lesson. And you'll notice that this first portion is the drill sounds, which we heard at the beginning of the lesson in Unit 1. So the teacher had some letter cards and she would make the letter keyword sound and students would echo her. So I've actually got audio embedded into this file that you just can't hear very well over my recording. So I'm just going to mimic the audio that I have going along with the animations. C, H, chin, ch. So I've just included one example of drill sounds here, but this slide could be duplicated and the teacher could change the letters, the picture, and the sound to incorporate that whole piece of the lesson. And notice then it helps the cadence and the rhythm, and the visual then keeps the students a little bit more engaged and lets them know what to expect. Next, you're going to see the wordplay, which was the second portion of that lesson. The teacher built some nonsense words and they practiced blending them. So let's take a look at how animations can support learning in building words. So again, I've got audio playing over this slide, which if you want to go in and present this slide on your own computer, you'll be able to hear it. But I will model the sound for you of what I would do if I were in the classroom. B, thub. And notice I had those animations set to just play one after the other. That's going to, again, help me keep that pacing and model for students how to break those words apart and keep it consistent for them. Now, you can also do some deletions and substitutions within these slides. So I'm just going to click again so you can see what that looks like. My U disappeared, and I could model then replacing it with the ah sound. And then we'll go through that blending routine again. F, ah, b. Notice that was one click and they each highlighted. That would make it really easy for students to see and follow where that blending is happening. And then click again and we'll read the word, thob. So I've got 2 more slides just like this that I won't run through, but I do want to note that I've kept the animations really consistent, and I've included a picture and a title so that students know what to expect when they see this slide to build routine. So same thing, it's going to happen in the same order, and the second click will allow them to practice reading the word. And then one more. So you could include audio for all of these, or the teacher could be using her voice as I modeled in that first slide. Now the next slide here we've got is sight words. And these are the sentences that the teacher used in the lesson from Unit 1. Now, I have it set again to animate because she wrote these on whiteboard tiles and was replacing them within the lesson. So watch how this could be a little bit smoother and keep the pace of the lesson going. So the students were focusing on words like we, she, he, be that follow that kind of rhyming pattern of the long E sound. So I've included an animation for just this front word to switch out so students could practice reading those sight words. You'll see as I click, the word disappears and then I make new words appear. On my next slide here, I've included some red boxes. This is where we could have that opportunity for guided practice. Now, unfortunately, this doesn't work within the presentation mode, so I'm going to exit out here. But students could be accessing this slide on a device of their own, or this could be done as a whole group. So again, they were focusing on words like we and be, and the students could then drag these boxes to highlight the words they were practicing, which is what they did in the lesson. Just doing it in a little different format here. Okay, and then same thing, I've got another slide here to show you what that might look like, where they could identify the sight word. Okay, and then the last portion here is where there's a lot of room for differentiation. And again, this allows for some guided practice that can give the teacher some information about how students are progressing. Now, you'll notice I've got an audio box here. If it was in presentation mode, students could just click that over that audio to allow it to play. You'll see that as I hover over it, my play button comes up. So they can replay this as many times as they want to as they're building words. And again, this allows me to provide some additional supports for students if it was necessary, so that they might be able to anticipate how many sound cards or letter cards, they would need in their word. Now, again, you won't be able to hear the audio of my slide because of how I am recording this video, but if you'd like to play around in the slide, you can go through and practice with this a little bit. But I first had the first word they were building here is the word chop. So the audio sounds like build the word chop. Ch, ah, p, chop. So I've broken that word apart for students, and I've provided support so that they know how many sounds they need to include in their word to be correct. And then these letter tiles can just be moved around, onto the tiles here, and they can build those words. Okay, and then they could leave their work this way, and this allows the teacher to then go in and check how they're doing to determine what steps to take next. So again, I've included 3 slides just like that with different audio. So if you'd like to play around with that and walk through the lesson as if you were a student, this is available to you within our mini course. So next, you will be thinking about how this lesson was improved using the rubric, and think about other ways that I could have adapted this lesson.